All right, good morning, everyone. This is Colleen Bracci with Remax Realty Group, and I am here with Brian Timmons with Remax Realty Group and the CB Real Estate team. And thank you guys for joining us this morning. In case you don't know, we do a lot of investment property sales, and we get questions and all kinds of requests for information on a regular basis. And we thought maybe we'd just kind of do a little question and answer thing here. We've got some of our esteemed guests like Joe LaBarbera and Andy McQuaid from FRIA. And I see Shane Hertz on here. He knows quite a bit about investment property as well. So we're hoping that, maybe a bunch of us can help you guys out with your questions. I do have to say that I am going to be cutting short my time on this meeting today because I've got to go do final walkthrough on 2 duplexes that are closing today. But Brian Timmons is going to carry on the show. So if I don't get to say goodbye, I'll say it now. And so, Brian, do you want to begin?
Yeah. So good morning, everybody. Who on this call does not own any investment property? Is just getting started. I know everybody doesn't have their camera on, but I can't see a show of hands, but we're going to really talk kind of high level about investing in Rochester and what it takes to get going. And we have several people on this call that have a lot of experience. So I invite you to jump in and answer questions and help with this discussion. So I'm going to take over the screen. So bear with me for a moment. And okay, can everybody see a blue screen that says investing in the rock?
There we go.
No.
No. Yes, you can.
I see it.
I can see it.
All right. So, the hot topic is for investing is Rochester, New York, and why invest in this area? Rochester is consistently a top 5 city for investing. We see it all the time. We get reports here in town that we're number 3 or we're number 2 or number 1. And this has been going on for a few years now. I've got some other audio going on. I'm not sure if somebody's not on mute. I can hear some background. There you go. Thank you. So a little bit about investing in Rochester and why we're so popular. There's a very large pool of renters. I even, I hear people of all kinds of income levels are able to rent in the area. People here on this call that have rental properties know that when they put an ad out for an opening, a vacancy, they get 60, 70, 100, 120 calls the first morning. It's crazy just how many people are out there looking for housing. There's also a lot of rent options for payment. We've got a lot of tenants who are able to pay cash. Some of the properties, a person with a minimum wage salary can still rent in Rochester. There's very affordable housing. There's also some people getting partial assistance and full assistance. And we'll discuss that a little bit further. Like I said, there's very affordable options for cash tenants. You can have a half of a duplex. You could be renting that for $525 in some cases. Keeps it very, very affordable in a nice setting. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. There's also a lot of nonprofits and foundations in Rochester that need housing for their clients. And that can also lead to a little bit better rents. And again, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there's also very affordable options for buyers, including multifamily and singles. I'm going to give you a couple examples here of some City of Rochester properties that we've sold recently. Is everybody seeing this full screen? Because my screen just changed to kind of a chopped up PowerPoint on my side, but
We're seeing it, but it's saying like click to add text or picture. There's a few little extra boxes to it, but it's fine. We're getting the view.
okay. I apologize. Some reason it just went back to that, and I can't get it to stop. So I
It's
apologize.
fine.
98 Carter Street, 492 Hague, 56 Bismarck, beautiful houses, 141 Norton. So taking a look at these 4 properties, these are all 3-bedroom homes with 1 bath. They were all purchased for $35,000 each. The tenants pay cash, and the tenants also pay their utilities on these properties. So 4 very different properties, 4 very different areas of the city, but 4 very affordable. Taking a look at Carter and Hague, these are both being rented for $750 a month. Affordable for most families to be able to rent these with 3-bedroom. You could have an entire family in there, and you're bringing in fairly good income. Bismarck and Norton, those are getting $1,000 a month. Again, 3-bedroom. Why would they be so different on rent? So there's a lot of factors that go into this and what you'd be able to charge for rent. Some of them are location. Bismarck and Norton, different locations than the Hague Carter areas. There's City of Rochester is very condensed, unlike some other areas, metro areas in the country that are very, very spread out. It's very dense. You can have very, very desirable neighborhoods right next to areas that maybe aren't as desirable. And it's amazing just what a couple blocks can do for location for what you can get for rent. Also, condition of the property. Some of these that have had quite a bit of money put into them are very desirable to a client, and you can get better rent for them. A big factor is length of time that a tenant has been there. There are some properties that probably could be renting for $1,000, but maybe the landlord is only charging $850 because that tenant's been there 10 years. They take care of everything. They're neat as a pin, always pay on time. Why mess with it? A good tenant is gold. And so maybe charging a little less, but knowing that property is very well maintained, knowing that there's no headaches, no worries. You know, I've had landlords say they go over to a property and they see a new door on it. They wonder where they come from. Well, the tenant put it on there. Need a new door. They're just people who really take great care. So again, why mess with it? Charge them a little bit less. Determining rent is also maybe what maintenance the tenant does. There are some people who take care of lawns. They take care of, like I just said, some other maintenance problems, and they take that money off of the rent, or they're charged a little less because they're self-sufficient. Other factors that go into it are assistance. If you're working with assistance through the city, there are certain levels that can be charged for the property. The city will only pay so much for certain properties when they come in and take a look at it. So rent could be capped. And there's also assistance where the tenant is paying a cash portion of it, and then the city is assisting with the rest of it. So sometimes some of that is pretty much predetermined as to what you can charge. On the other end of it, if you're working with some of these nonprofits that I mentioned earlier, some of these foundations like Catholic Family Charities, places like that, sometimes you can get a little bit higher rent. They're willing to pay to get some larger families into some of these locations. So funding your purchase, there's two totally different ways of funding these purchases. There's loans versus cash. I'll actually start with the cash first because that's probably the easiest. Having a cash purchase really means that the bank is not going to be coming in, having to appraise the property, take a look and see what it's really worth. Really, once you put in an offer and that's accepted on it, your attorneys can start ordering title. The process is rolling for you to get towards closing. With a loan, if you can get a loan, depending on how much the property is, you're not going to be able to turn to certain lenders and get money for it. You're probably going to have to turn to private equity companies, private lenders that are going to give you a loan for that. They're still going to want to know about condition of the house, but it's not going to be a bank inspection. And we will really expand on that at the end of the presentation on loans. So also with loans, there's a C of O. So property, I want to say property has to have a certificate of occupancy. Not all do it in Rochester. But if you're going to get a loan on a property, you'll need a C of O, certificate of occupancy, to transfer that property over. Certificate of occupancy is only valid for a certain amount of time and is only transferable if the C of O has been put in place for a multifamily home within the past 2 years. And there's a lot that goes into getting a C of O. So if you need to get a certificate of occupancy for a home, if you're going to be having people on assistance that are going to be living there, this is definitely something that's going to be needed. If you're getting a loan, it's something you're going to have. The city inspection is going to come in and at a very high level, they're going to look at a lot of safety aspects of the house. Handrails, chipping paint, electrical issues, just livability of it, heating systems. There's quite a bit they go through that inspection. And you will get a inspection report on what repairs need to be done to make it so you can have an acceptable C of O, so it does pass. There's also lead tests that need to be done on the property. 99% of the houses in the city of Rochester have lead paint now. Probably just the Habitat for Humanity new builds are the only ones that don't have them. I don't know of many properties that have been totally lead has been remediated from the houses. You'd have to scrape every single surface down to get lead paint out, and that's just not done. So they come in and test for it, painting over surfaces, cleaning surfaces, scraping, painting. That in most cases you'll get past your lead test. But lead test is part of getting your certificate of occupancy. So in wrap up, I'd really like to open this up to talking to some of the people here with experience about types of funding that they've had to go through. Share that. I'm going to stop screen share. I know we've got some people on the call with quite a bit of experience, and I think the real core of investing in Rochester is how you're getting your funding. If you're going in with a group of people to buy a home, forming an LLC, and the individuals within the LLC, who is signing for that home, what agreements have been made. I very much recommend you do not do a handshake agreement with your buddies to buy a property. One of you puts your name on the property and the rest of you say, yeah, you just pay us each 25% of the profits and we'll help you out with repairs. That will last about the first 6 weeks and then it'll start going downhill from there. You're only as good as the weakest link in that group of investors. So you want everything fully documented. You want everything to go through your lawyers. You want contracts with each member in there. And you want to make it all completely legal. So form an LLC, have the, everybody should have a role within that LLC as well. And your lawyers will want to know that. So I'd like to open it up to some other people who have purchased property. Joe, I don't know if you're still on the call right now, but some of the different funding options maybe you've used in the past that are out there. Joe still there, or is he traveling? I knew he had to travel. Oh, you're muted too.
Probably in his car.
Okay. So I'll jump in. So different properties, a bank won't touch a loan if it's at a lower level. You get in the $40,000 range, $45,000 and below. A bank, it costs more to service that loan than they're going to be making for it. So banks won't really touch that. You need to go to private lenders. Also with multifamily homes, there's some banks that won't touch those properties as well. And so private lenders tend to be the place to go to get your property. And there are plenty of private lenders in the area.
If I can jump in there for one second,
go ahead.
Brian, just to let you know, and I know I mentioned this organization quite a bit, but I'll tell you right now, if you are doing investment property, you want to get involved with the FREIA organization. It's FFREIA, and they are a local chapter of a national organization, the FREIA organization nationally. And they do a meeting once a month on alternative financing, which is often talking about where you can find hard money, where you can find private money lenders, buying notes, all kinds of good information. And with that being said, I also want to say that many times we've been approached by a buyer who says, I've been pre-qualified for $200,000. I want to buy this $45,000 single family house. You can show me a letter of $200,000 and that's great, but I'm going to tell you that you need to take that letter back to the bank and tell them you want to buy the $45,000 house, because while it seems logical that you'd be able to buy a $45,000 house because you've been approved for $200,000, it's not the case, because as Brian just said, it costs more for them to service a lower end loan. They consider it a higher risk. And many times they have a minimum requirement for financing. So we do find that most of our single family houses, especially under 50,000, 60,000, are being sold cash or by private financing. Same thing goes for two family houses. Very difficult to get a two family house financed under $65,000. So even though you have that pre-approval from whatever loan officer you went to, you need to specify to them that you may be looking at lower cost housing and find out what their minimum loan requirement is.
And the government won't finance most investment properties. You can't get an FHA loan for investment property. And some banks that will fund higher value homes, they won't let you go to that well too many times. There's some banks that have a cap on 10 investment properties. After that, they won't finance anymore for you because they're a high risk. Especially right now with eviction moratoriums in place. It's a risk that you'll have your income coming in. I know, I think Colleen yesterday with Jamie's call, did she have some updates on evictions?
Lots of updates. And to be honest, I had to bail out of that call before it finished, but I do have a PowerPoint presentation that she sent out, and I'm happy to share that with people. The eviction moratorium obviously is causing some angst in the landlord investment property community. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of tenants who are taking advantage of the COVID situation, even if they were not impacted by COVID. And it's been a trying year for a lot of landlords. That being said, though, when we're having buyers buy investment property where where tenants are behind in rent, we have worked out a situation where it seems to be helpful to the buyers. It's also helpful to the sellers to be offloading property where the tenants may not be current. When we sell the property, when we accept an offer, we put a clause in the offer that says if the tenants are not current upon closing, the seller will escrow 3 months rent to the buyer at closing. What that 3 months escrow is say the seller has already started eviction on the tenant who wasn't paying, and we're just waiting for the courts to open up and allow evictions to take place again. Maybe that'll happen next month. Maybe that'll happen in 2 months. If the tenant moves out in 2 months' time, then the seller's going to get back 1 month of rent. If the tenants are stuck in place for 3 months, the buyer's not losing the funds from them being in place for 3 months without paying rent. And you get covered, and hopefully you can move forward to eviction quickly after the 3 month period. So it just kind of eases the transition. It allows the seller to sell something that he's been struggling with, and hopefully on the horizon, with the eviction moratorium being lifted, you'll have more positive success with getting the tenants out or getting them caught up at least. Now, a lot of people, they have great tenants in place, but they took advantage of the COVID thing, or they were actually impacted by COVID and they just didn't pay rent for several months. When a new owner takes over, you can kind of judge for yourself. Is this a trustworthy tenant? Did they really just fall by the wayside because of COVID? Or did they're just not great and we want to get them out? If they're decent tenants and they really did struggle and maybe they just got so far behind that they felt they couldn't get out, maybe you want to keep that tenant and work with them and try and get them back on the straight and narrow. I mean, if they've been there 3 years and they only stopped paying rent 6 months ago, they might have been a good tenant and just got overwhelmed with everything going on. So each buyer has to take that scenario into consideration whenever you go and you meet a tenant. If it's a tenant you don't want, then, by all means remove them. But if it's a tenant that keeps a clean apartment and, seems to be respectful and, maybe hardworking and just trying to get caught up, then you might want to work with them and create a new situation for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And really your first step on this journey should be visit Rochester Housing Authority website and really read everything over that goes into investing here. Rochester is an area that you can get lower cost housing, you can get higher rents. Yes, you have to get C of O here, unlike some cities, but it's also very easy. Your cost of entry is much better in Rochester, but go to the Rochester Housing Authority page, take a look, read up on what a certificate of occupancy really is, read up on what goes into a lead test, and then choose who's going to represent you. And this is not a plug for Colleen and myself, but really choose the agent you're going to work with and ask them some questions based on what you've just learned on Rochester Housing Authority. If they can't answer those questions correctly, you may want to rethink who you're working with, because this is a big investment for you. And if you purchase a house and you find out it's unrentable, suppose it's a single family that somebody converted to a 2-family, but the city of Rochester doesn't have it on their records as a 2-family. It's an illegal 2-family house. And you think you're going to be getting this rent on both sides. Well, when they come through and inspect it and they don't allow it, all of a sudden your return on that investment could be cut in half.
Another website too, I'm sorry to tack on to that, housingcouncil.org. They are another wonderful venue for landlords. And both Housing Council and Rochester Housing Authority have landlord ambassador programs where you can call up and get, free guidance from somebody who knows what they're talking about. So highly recommend those two things.
Yeah. Your next step is to have a good attorney that deals in real estate. If you have an attorney that handles, you know, that
Estate planning.
your speeding tickets you get every week or something, that may not be the same attorney you want to use for real estate. Have somebody who's really well versed. They will pick things out in the real estate contracts that just don't look right, and they'll turn back to you. They'll turn to your agent and they'll say, what's going on with this property? They'll stop the process if they see something is wrong. The other place then you want to turn to is start talking to your lenders. Shop around. Find out what rates people are giving. Investment property, the percentage rate is usually higher, a little bit higher than if you're buying a owner-occupied house that you're going to be living in. But shop around and take a look at those rates, because they can fluctuate quite a bit. And then, as Colleen said, being a member of the FRIA group, going on those calls, you're going to meet people who are selling, people who own anywhere from 2 houses to 200 houses in Rochester, and you'll have a wealth of information at your fingertips. And there's a lot of lenders on that as well. The nice thing about borrowing from some of the people that have a lot of properties is they're going to help. They're going to be another set of eyes looking at that property. Before they give you the money, they'll take a look at the property. They probably know the property. They probably bought it and sold it themselves, owned it a couple times over the years. So they'll know a lot about the property, and they'll be able to either stop you or say, hey, yeah, let's go forward with this. I'm going to lend you the money for it. They'll tell you what work needs to be done. So there's something to be said from borrowing from a private lender who actually owns property in Rochester. You're tapping into the funding and you're tapping into their expertise. And I had one other thing, and property management. So regardless if you live in the area, or you're in Binghamton, New York City, or Australia, if you are unable to get to your property when there's an issue quickly, you're going to want somebody handling that property and overseeing it. It's nothing worse than you're away and you find out that you've got several violations on the home you didn't know about because you haven't seen it in 2 months. You want somebody watching over that property. In some cases, if it's a multifamily home, you're going to be responsible for yard maintenance, quite a bit of the outside of the house, as well as the inside. Single family homes, the tenants, there tends to be an arrangement where they take care of the yard themselves in some occasions. But that still doesn't cover you for the furnace that dies in the middle of the night, the hot water tank that's leaking, broken windows, things like that. Or the television sets that get left out on the front porch that now the city of Rochester is fining you for. So you want some eyes on that property. And there's good property management companies in the area. And again, through FRIA, you're going to be able to ask, who are other people using? There's good property management companies on our FRIA call. So that's really, really the important thing. A few years ago, the city of Rochester made it that in their property report. So if you go online and look at City of Rochester property portal, it has to be listed in there now who maintains the property, the contact information, where they are. So if the city needs to get a hold of somebody, it's not a number of somebody who's in Ireland or Australia. It's got to be somebody here that's overseeing the property. So having a good property manager is key. They're going to be the ones probably collecting rent. They're going to be that, like I said, the eyes and ears on the property, and the ones that are going to be responding to the phone calls at 2:00 in the morning when the hot water tank goes. We're at 9:30 now. I'd love to open it up to questions. I know Colleen's got to go in about 10 minutes before she goes. I'd love to open it up to any questions.
Yeah, Brian Sherwin here. So I live in Rochester. I'm a part of FRIA the first year. I own investment properties everywhere but Rochester because my family, I've gone in, just as you said, with family in their towns where they live, in Texas or in other places. And I don't have any other family here. It's just me. So now we're looking to go in here with family, right? So, so new to Rochester, but not new to investing. Tell me a little bit about student housing. I know you talked about the 50K basically and under that cash flows really well. Student housing, and then also 3 to 4 multifamily that would be higher, that maybe a bank would give you a loan on. So those two other categories.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on those?
Student housing, there's certain areas of Rochester that are prime for student housing. There's areas in Henrietta around RIT, but I think the hottest area is the 19th Ward, because of U of R. Once the University of Rochester built that footbridge over the river, it really opened up a huge area, the 19th Ward. And every day I see another listing that creeps further and further north away from that, what we used to call the U of R area, Brooks Avenue, that area right up around the footbridge. It creeps further and further north that we're seeing people buying homes for student housing. That being said, we're also seeing such a shortage of properties in Rochester that people are buying those houses now for owner occupied. So there's a real pinch in those areas. And because of that, properties are going higher and higher. As far as funding for them, again, there are some banks that won't touch a multifamily home. There's some that will. I don't know, Colleen, if you want to jump in. I don't know if you know of any banks now that are actually handling some of those loans.
Canandaigua National Bank, Lions National Bank, because they're local, they have their own portfolio programs and they are a little more easy to obtain financing for multifamily houses. One thing you do want to know, Sherwin, and I'm not sure if everybody knows this, when you go from a single family, 2-family, or 3-family house, you're paying residential tax rate to the city. When you go to a 4-family and over, you're paying a commercial tax rate, which is quite a bit different. And I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in my head right now, but it's quite a good chunk. And with that commercial tax rate, that does not include your refuse collection. So you're often paying for a dumpster as well. So factor that in when you're doing your equations for 4-family and above, because you do have additional expenses on that end. In terms of financing, conventional financing is the only way to go if you're going to go through a bank. You can't get an FHA loan unless you're living in the house. And even then, it's a little tricky. So if you're going to do financing for multifamily houses and it's going to be through a bank, it's going to be a conventional financing situation. On top of that, your down payment will be more. It'll be, instead of FHA, which your minimum could be 3.5%, you're looking at 5 to 20%, sometimes 25% for, depending on the bank, for your down payment.
Yeah, I've looked up some of the banks and a lot of them have the 75% rule, which means they'll only finance 75% of an investment property. So a lot of them are at that 25% rate. So you're going to want to look into that. Again, I really stress that you, even if it's family members, you form an LLC. And, if a tenant comes after you to sue you, if there's a fall on the property, if something does happen, they're going after the LLC. They're not going to be going after you personally. Let's hope. But that kind of protects you, and it's just going to help you with the whole arrangement. Even if it's just yourself, I would still have an LLC formed.
I'm going to jump in really quickly and just say, because I got to leave in like 3 minutes. There's a couple things coming up on the horizon here, guys. Number one, we're going to be publishing a schedule on what our topics are going to be and when our meetings are going to be very shortly. We are going to have a meeting on forming an LLC with an attorney who's, an expert at doing so to answer your questions about that. We're also going to have something called a virtual caravan where we are going to walk you through a lot of our investment property listings. Over the next 2 weeks, we've got about 25 investment properties coming onto the market. And in this area and in this time, these houses are going like, hotcakes, I guess they would say. So, we're going to give you a walk through the properties and maybe answer some of your questions and give you some insider information on that. That will be our next meeting. And the other thing, if you guys don't mind, before you leave today, if you want to throw in the comments section, we are finding that this meeting time on Friday mornings is difficult for some people because they have to go to work. And we're thinking about doing nighttime meetings. We do not want to do Thursday nights because that's when Freya has their meetings, and we never want to step on those toes because we want to be at those meetings. So we're thinking maybe Wednesday nights, if that works for you, or if there's another morning or another day or time that works best, just give us a shout and let us know what your schedule looks like, and we'll try to get it all put together so that everybody's happy. And if you can't make the meeting, we always have it recorded, and we try to put it on our Facebook pages. We're going to get a little bit better at that. I have missed the last one going up, but so that's something we're going to be doing as well. So just give us your input. We'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Colleen. Any other questions from anyone? So as you can see, with us having that many listings coming up, even with tenants not paying, being back behind on rent, unable to evict, things like that, properties are changing hands in Rochester. The only reason why you see that maybe we have a property that's been on the market for 4 or 5 days, it's only because we had delayed negotiations on it. So what that means is we put the house up for sale today, but we don't accept any offers. We don't review the offers with the seller until, say, Tuesday. So that gives the maximum amount of time for people to come through, see the property. We usually do a bunch of group showings. And then we basically ask for highest and best on the property. And, we get a pretty good dollar for the properties, but we present multiple offers to the seller. They take a look and see what their best situation might be for a changing hand. Of course, cash, maybe no inspection. There's a lot of factors to it. And so we present every single offer that comes through and let them choose. But property is selling in Rochester still. Can also say some of the service that Colleen and I do is when we know what you're looking for. Sherwin, suppose you just want singles, and you come through and you say, I only want singles in the 19th ward, 3 bedrooms and up. We hunt down those properties for you. We discuss a couple properties that we think are good targets. If you agree, then we go in. If you're not here in town, we walk through, shoot video, we take down all the details, look at what repairs we see need to be made, if that roof is a tear off or not. And then we put together a little report, or we get you on the phone. Sometimes we even have you on the phone while we're walking through. We'll FaceTime with you. So we give you that information and kind of give you our recommendation on, what we think needs to be done. We're not going to be able to tell you, this needs, $17,000 worth of work. We're going to probably be able to ballpark the roughly some of the repairs, but we never want to be held to a dollar amount of work that needs to be done. We're just going to throw you the facts of the repairs that we see, and if we think it's going to pass the C of O or not. We've seen so many properties. We pretty much know now what kind of work would need to be done. What we're seeing lately is a lot of these property owners do not want to supply a new C of O. So that will slightly limit your options for funding if a new C of O is not going to come with the house. Hopefully that C of O was only put into place on that multifamily house within the past 2 years, so it will transfer to the new owner. But if it doesn't, then you've got a decision to make. Getting that work done before the property changes hands, or maybe you take possession via cash or private lender and take it without a C of O and do that work. With COVID, it does tend to be difficult in some cases. A lot of tenants are saying they have COVID. We can't get in these houses. I'm not going to doubt anybody, but it's difficult to get in and do these repairs. It's difficult to get in to show the houses. It's been tough for us to list them in some occasions. So things are a little differently now, but Colleen and I have learned a lot of tricks that we can get in and see these properties and get you the information. Any other questions from anybody? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Please consider going on the FRIA site and signing up for their next meeting and sit in on that. I think it'll be extremely valuable to you. If you do own properties and you become a member, there are some discounts you get, like at Home Depot stores. So it can help you with paint for properties. I can't stress enough that you have a good attorney, you have a good lender, and you really study up on the City of Rochester site, what it takes to own property. Colleen and I can help you through the process. There's always something to learn. There's always changes going on here. We do send some mass mailings out when we see changes, just to make people aware of something that's gone on in the City of Rochester. We have guests on our Zoom call that talk about some of the processes of getting people on assistance, lead abatement, things like that. So we appreciate you logging into this, and soon we'll have all our topics mapped out, at least for the next 3 months or so. All right. With that, I'll give everybody back 15 minutes of their day, and thank you for logging in today.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.